Among the many divine manifestations of Lord Sri Mahavishnu, the Narasimha Avataram stands apart. Fierce, mysterious, and unforgettable. Across the Bhagavata Purana, Vishnu Purana, and other countless scriptures, the image of Narasimha tearing through the pillar to save Prahlada and destroy Hiranyakashipu has echoed for centuries. It's a moment etched deep into the cultural and spiritual fabric of India, a story that nearly everyone knows. But here lies the wonder. Beyond this famous episode are layers of legends, hidden geographies, and symbolic truths that very few have ever explored. Where exactly did Narasimha emerge? What sacred places still bear witness to this divine event? How did different traditions across regions and centuries interpret this fierce form of Sri Mahavishnu? And why does Narasimha continue to resonate so powerfully even in our contemporary world? This video is not about retelling the story you already know. Instead, it's about uncovering the lesser known dimensions of Narasimha Avatar. The untold origins, the forgotten lore, and the fascinating aspects that reveal why this avatar remains one of the most enigmatic and powerful symbols of dharma. While everyone knows the main story, there are some really interesting and less known aspects about Narasimha Avatar, especially the mystery of where this divine form first appeared. And that's exactly what we'll explore in today's video. So let's get started. These are very popular lines from the Telugu Bhakti lore. Krutetu Narasimha Tretayam Raghunandanaha Dwapare Vasudeva Kalau Venkatanayakaha. It means that in Krita Yuga, it is Lord Narasimha who is primarily worshipped. In Treta Yuga, it is Lord Raghunandana or Rama. And in Dwapara Yuga, the focus is on Lord Vasudeva. And in Kali Yuga, that's currently, the presiding deity is Lord Venkateswara Swami of Tirupati. These lines essentially establish the timeline or the antiquity of Narasimha Avatar. All of us know that Narasimha Avatar happened much before Rama Avatar. It is essentially placed in the Krita Yuga. So that essentially gives us a clue that the possibilities of having physical relics of Narasimha Avatar could be relatively low. So let's get straight to the heart of the topic. Where did the Narasimha Avatar actually originate? Tradition gives us two broad narratives. One points to the ancient city of Multan in present-day Pakistan, to the northwest of India, a place that once held a powerful connection to Narasimha worship. And the other takes us deep into the southern India, where sacred sites and living traditions claim to be the very ground from which of these is true, or rather which one has stronger echoes in history, archaeology, and scriptures. In this video, we'll explore both the narratives and examine the evidence that ties them to the timeless story of Narasimha Avatar. Narasimha Avatar is believed to have originated from a place once known as Moolasthana, now currently being called as Multan in present-day Pakistan. The meaning of the word Moolasthana is place of origin. Over time, the name evolved into what we now call as Multan in present-day Pakistan. According to legend, Prahlada himself built a temple, Prahladapuri, around the pillar or the stamba from which Narasimha emerged. This site was revered as the true birthplace of Narasimha Avatar. Sadly, that temple met repeated cycles of destruction, you know from whom. The structure suffered damage during colonial era conflicts and was severely neglected after the partition. In 1992, in the aftermath of the Babri Masjid's demolition in India, the Prahladapuri temple of Narasimha was destroyed once more by a mob as retaliation. But again, sticking to the topic, so this place, Moolasthana, could possibly be the origin of Narasimha. Now there is a bit of a catch here. Just because a place is called Moolasthana or Multan, one cannot automatically assume that it is the original birthplace of Narasimha Avatar. Yes, Multan in present-day Pakistan did once have famous Prahladapuri temple, built in reverence of Narasimha. Yes, Narasimha worship was very much alive there before the temple was destroyed in history. All of that is true. But does that mean Narasimha Avatar originated there? The evidence is far thinner than it seems. Here is why. In Samba Purana, which is one of the Upapuranas and a crucial source describing the ancient geography of present-day Pakistan, the text says, Adyam sthanamidam bhanoho paschat sambhavena nirmitam, which means this is the original seat of Bhanu or the sun or the Surya. Later it was constructed by Samba. Basically, Samba is the son of Bhagwan Sri Krishna who constructs a temple in the honor of Surya in that place, Adyasthanam or Moolasthanam or Moolasthan or Multan. That's how the name evolved. So the word Adyasthanam means the first place, the original seat. Over time, this was remembered as Moolasthana, which in later Prakrit and Urdu became Multan. The The Samba Purana is clear. This site was primarily a seat of Surya worship, not Narasimha's manifestation. So while Prahladapuri temple and the long tradition of Narasimha devotion in Multan prove the deity was worshipped there with great reverence, calling it as the original place of Narasimha simply because of the name Moolasthana does not really hold up the scriptural evidence. What it does show us, however, is the deep antiquity and reach of Narasimha worship across Bharat, extending as far as Multan itself. Now let us turn to the second narrative about the origin of Narasimha Avatar. It is to the southern part of India, and the place we arrive at is none other than Ahobilam in the present-day Andhra Pradesh. Before we get into its details, it is important to pause and recognize a painful truth about our history. The northern part of India bore the brunt of repeated invasions, and with it, the destruction of many of our sacred sites. In a way, the temples of the south, places like Tirupati, Srirangam and countless others survived because of the north that absorbed the heaviest blows of the invasions. And so, what we see preserved in south is not just survival but continuity, living traditions carried forward for centuries. And nowhere is this more striking than in the worship of Narasimha. Believe it or not, across the entire Indian subcontinent, more than 90, even 95% of Narasimha shrines are found in just two states, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. This alone tells us how deeply the devotion of Narasimha has been safeguarded in this part of Bharat. Which brings us to Ahobilam, revered in scripture, celebrated in tradition and held by many as the very spot where the Lord burst forth from the pillar to protect Prahlada. Ahoviryam Ahoshauriyam Ahobahuparakramah Narasimham Paramam Daivam Ahobalam. These are again the lines from the Bhakti lore in Telugu, even though it's written in Sanskritam. These lines are very popular. Basically, these were the exclamations that the Devatas were making when Narasimha Avatar burst forth from the pillar. Ahobalam means what a valor. So that exclamation of Ahobalam eventually became Ahobilam in Telugu, hence the name Ahobilam. Ahobilam is located in the Nallamala hills of Andhra Pradesh, surrounded by thick forests, streams and rocky cliffs. It is a remote pilgrimage site, far from big cities, which gives it a unique character and almost untouched atmosphere. According to tradition, this is the very place where Lord Narasimha appeared to protect Prahlada and destroy Hiranyakashipu. And one of the most powerful and revered places in Ahobilam is Ugrasthambam. This is a tall cleft in the rocky hills, high above the forest, which tradition remembers as the very pillar from which Lord Narasimha burst forth to slay Hiranyakashipu. For obvious reasons, this may not be a man-made construction of sorts, but this place holds that significance as Ugrasthambam, which means the pillar from which Ugra Narasimha emerged. Reaching this place, Ugrasthambam in Ahobilam, is not easy. Pilgrims climb steep rocky paths through the Nallamala hills, and when they finally arrive, they just don't see a piece of nature. They are seeing a living relic of the Narasimha Avataram. That's how the belief is held very sacredly in Ahobilam. As I said, there are 9 different Narasimha Kshetras in and around Ahobilam in few meters to kilometers distance. Yoga Narasimha, Jwala Narasimha, Ugra Narasimha, Malola Narasimha, Krodha Narasimha, Karanja Narasimha, Bhargava Narasimha, Pavana Narasimha and Chatravata Narasimha. Each of these Narasimha Swamis, the deities and the shrines, have their own Sthala Puranas. For example, Bhargava Narasimha, it is associated with the Parasurama Avatar. It's the place where Parasurama worshipped Narasimha Swami. So like this, there is enormous amount of cultural and living memory about Narasimha Swami in and around the place of origin of Narasimha Avatar in Ahobilam. And this place is incredibly surrounded in the depths of Nallamala forest. And probably that is the reason it is so well guarded by the nature itself over eons of time. So yes, Ahobilam is very much the place of birth or origin of Narasimha. And then not just Ahobilam, Sri Varaha Narasimha Swami, Simhachalam, Vaidya Narasimha, Yadagiri Gutta, Lakshmi Narasimha, Penchalakona, Panakala Narasimha, Mangalagiri. Like this, the Swayambhu Kshetras of Narasimha Swami in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana is just unbelievable. You will not find anywhere else in any part of the world so much of worship of Narasimha Swami that you find in these two Telugu speaking states. One thing what I would like to say is, it is well known fact that the northern part of India bore the brunt of all the invasions, and thanks to that, and that's the reason these temples in south have been very intact. But then If we don't know what is preserved in the south, then what's the point? How many non-Telugu speakers know really about this fact that 95% of Narasimha Swami Kshetras are located in the Telugu speaking region? That's only because of Ahobilam, because that is fundamentally the place of origin of Narasimha Avatar. And eventually the Narasimha Aradhana has been very deep into the culture of the entire Telugu speaking region. But then, that does not mean that Narasimha Aradhana is nowhere else in India. It is just that it is lost. Let me give you some example to understand. One of the most fascinating and ancient forms of Vishnu's worship in India, from Bihar all the way till Afghanistan and beyond, is the iconography of Vaikuntha Vishnumurti. This is a unique depiction of Lord Sri Mahavishnu with the central face, which is flanked by two of his avatars, Narasimha on one side and Varaha on the other. Relics of this tradition dating back to nearly 2000 years or even before that have been discovered across the vast geography from Bihar to Kashmir to Nepal, Himachal Pradesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan and even beyond that. In these sculptures, Narasimha Avatar was not seen in isolation but as an inseparable part of Sri Mahavishnu's cosmic form. For many centuries, this Vaikuntha tradition or Vaikuntha Vishnumurti tradition thrived across the northern and northwestern parts of the subcontinent. Unfortunately, much of it has been lost over last 1500 to 2000 years. Today, most of these icons lie in museums and the living tradition survives only in a handful of temples, such as in one of the remote part of the Himachal Pradesh. This shows us two things very clearly. First, how deeply Narasimha worship was once rooted across the length of India and beyond. And second, how much of that continuity is preserved today in the south. In fact, in the Telugu speaking regions of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, Narasimha Aradhana remains vibrantly alive, carried forward in dozens upon dozens of temples. So while the north absorbed the blows of the history, and thanks to it, much of it was lost, unfortunately, it is the south that is the tradition where it is safeguarded, making Narasimha worship of these regions not just devotions but also living heritage. Not just Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, but Narasimha Swami worship is well rooted in parts of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu as well. In fact, the largest monolithic statue of Narasimha Swami, which is almost 22 feet height, is found in Hampi. It is actually Lakshmi Narasimha Swami. Unfortunately, the statue was vandalized in the Battle of Talikota, and the statue of Lakshmi Devi sitting on the left lap of Narasimha Swami is broken. All that's left is Narasimha Swami seated in yogic posture with his arms vandalized, and the statue of Ma Lakshmi on his left lap totally missing. It is the largest single stone representation of Narasimha Swami in the world, carved in 1528 CE, and one of the most iconic remnants of the Vijayanagara Empire. The cultural memory of Narasimha Avatar is not only preserved through devotion or bhakti, but also through the lineage of Prahlada himself. As we know, Prahlada, the child devotee who was protected by Narasimha Swami, went on to have children of his own. One of them was Virochana. And then Virochana's son was none other than the Bali, the great king who was blessed by Vaman Avatar to rule over Patala. Even today, the legacy of Bali is deeply woven into the culture of Kerala. The festival of Onam celebrations, the annual return of the king Mahabali to his people, a time when Kerala remembers prosperity, equality and dharmic rule under his reign. Thus, the story of Narasimha lives on not just in temples, but in living traditions like Onam that honor Prahlada's lineage. Prahlada naturally is remembered in every Narasimha Kshetram. But what about Virochana? His role is far less spoken of, yet there are fascinating hints that invite us to look closer. Perhaps we may be wrong, but exploring this direction could open up some very interesting connections about Virochana. Now let us turn to a fascinating parallel outside India, in the faraway lands of South America. The ancient Andean people worshipped a supreme creator deity called Viracocha. In their religion, Viracocha was the god who brought order to the world, creating the sun, moon, sky and earth. He was remembered as a civilizer, as a teacher who gave people arts, literature, culture, law and everything, and established wisdom and order in the society. But what makes this figure so intriguing is the legend of his disappearance and promise of return. Viracocha is said to have vanished westwards towards the Pacific Ocean, that is towards the Indian subcontinent, with the prophecy that one day he would come back. back, westward from Peru, of course, that leads to the Indian subcontinent. Now, if we look at this through a cultural lens, the similarities are striking. In Kerala, the festival of Onam celebrates the memory of just and beloved King Mahabali, who gave his people prosperity, law, and equality, and who is believed to return once every year. In Peru, the people worshipped Viracocha in a very similar light as a god king who gave them civilization and promised to return. This raises a curious possibility: could the Viracocha of the Virochana of the ancient Indian tradition and the Viracocha of the Andes could be connected? After all, Virochana was the son of the Prahlada and the father of Bali, kings associated with Patala, a realm described in our Puranas as lying beneath the land that we stand. If we were one to map this myth onto geography, Patala could be very well corresponding to the lands of the ocean, even South America itself. Of course, we must be careful. This could just be a coincidence or a confirmation bias, seeing connections where none exist. But much of the ancient Andean religion has been lost, and what remains are fragments of history and legend. Yet, the echoes in the names of, or in the cultural memories, and in the motives of God King who civilizes and promised to return, make this angle far too interesting to ignore. So we have journeyed through the lesser known facts, the different shrines, geographies, narratives, cultures, and traditions of Narasimha Avatar. Some lost to history, some still thriving in living memory. Let me close this video with the core philosophy of Narasimha Swami, which I learnt as a kid through this Telugu verse. Indu galadu andu ledanu sandehambu valadu chetri sarvopaгаతుండు ఎందెందు వెతకి చూసిన అందందే గలడు దానవాగ్రని వింటే. Which means every speck of this universe, every grain of dust, every element of nature, every corner of the cosmos is pervaded by the presence of Sri Mahavishnu. And that is precisely what Narasimha Avatar demonstrates. Hiranyakashipu sought to escape death by demanding countless conditions and exceptions. But Narasimha Swami showed up that no matter the rules or loopholes, when dharma must be protected, he can emerge from even the most ordinary object, a simple pillar, to uphold truth and dharma. That is the essence of Narasimha Swami, the eternal protection of Vishnu, who resides in every inch of the creation in this nature and cosmos, in every breath of nature and in every fabric of cosmos itself. With that thought, I hope this video has given you a few new perspectives on this great Mahavatar Narasimha Swami. As always, thanks for watching.